Welcome to the Grampians Wine podcast. I'm your host, Neil Butler. In each episode of the podcast, we speak to a representative of the Grampians winemakers or of one of the wineries in the region. We'll learn about the wines, the wineries, and of course the personalities associated with one of Victoria's leading wine regions. Today, I'm pleased to reintroduce Ben Thomson from Best's Wines, who's going to talk to us about key moments in the vintage and how they come together to create the bottle of wine you and I enjoy. Welcome back, Ben.
How are you, Neil? Good to see you again.
Good to see you again as well. Thank you. We hear talk of vintages, but let's get a better understanding of the process. Let's start immediately after a harvest and the vines start again. When do we first see fruit?
Well, generally, to be honest, straight after harvest, most people try and have a holiday from the vineyard.
Yes, but
to be honest, though, that doesn't always happen. But anyway, so generally what happens straight after harvest is quite often a lot of people would put down some nutrients in that for them because the vines have used up a lot of nutrients during the year. So we probably generally, as a rule, put some nutrients back in, maybe through dripper or a foliar spray, mainly before they lose all their leaves, just so they can, go to sleep with some build-up energy, a bit like a bear. They go and hibernate, they have a hell of a heap of food before they go to sleep, so they've got something to come out of.
What time of year?
We're talking sort of May, April, May, or generally as soon as you finish picking, we would sort of try and hop into that. The warmer regions would probably do that a bit earlier than the cooler regions.
Mm-hmm.
Then once all the leaves are off, we'll generally start pruning. Now, depending on the size of the vineyard you've got, we try to start late May because we've got a reasonable amount of area to get over. So if you've got a small amount, you can probably start a bit later, or depending on how many pruners you can get into prune. So generally pruning runs from late May to the end of August, maybe into September, but that's in our region, in the Grampians region. That's what we generally run at. You like to be finished sort of pruning before bud burst, and bud burst, as a rule of thumb, I would say is mid-September. Some varieties will start a bit earlier. So once they've been pruned and all that, we wait for bud burst. Then generally we'll just watch them for a bit, and we'll get to little woolly buds, and we'll have a look at them and decide whether we need to put a bud mite spray on, which is just a straight sulphur. And all it is they just don't like the smell of sulphur, basically, and they fall over. Then basically from then on, it's just really watching your vineyard for any disease or pests or anything like that. Generally in our region, I think most of Australia now try to be very minimal and very soft chemicals and all that sort of stuff. Or, well, that's what we try and do, and I think our general region tries to do that.
Yeah.
Then after bud birth, we'll get shoots coming out, sort of. Where's my hand? Yay long, and It's amazing how quick you can actually see the bunches on the vines. When the shoots are only like 10 mil long, you can actually pull the leaf apart and see the bunches starting to form.
Wow. Okay.
So and then sort of we get to November, we'll have shoots coming out. We'll see little bunches being formed on the vines, and then most people will go through and do a bit of an estimate or a bunch count, and then you'll have a bit of an idea what your crop might look like, whether it's going to be heavy or light sort of thing. And it all tends to happen quite quickly too. Like you get bud burst 1 minute, and you come back over the weekend, and all of a sudden, they're 2 centimeters long.
Mm-hmm.
5 days later, they're 6 centimeters long, and they go quite. Yeah, they do grow quite quickly at the start. So basically, from from bud burst through to December, it's watching, monitoring, make sure they're all nice and healthy. Keep the water up to them if they need water. Generally, what we try and do is there's a lot of different methods of using, testing for water and that. You can have probes in the ground, but we generally go around with a shovel or a dig stick and just pull out a core and feel it in your hands. And I think that's the best way to do it. And the other thing we do with our irrigation is tend to watch the weather it's no good trying to put water on them when it's hot. You need to put the water on before it gets hot, so they've got reserves built up. So basically, it's just watching. And then after that, they sort of late January, we could come to a veraison, and that's where the grapes start to change colour from green to red, or green to clear for whites, and that's when it all starts to really happen, and the bunches will start to swell up, the berries will start to grow and develop quite a lot more, and away we go from there. And then from then on, I know it sounds pretty quick the way I'm saying it. There's quite a bit to be done, watching and all that. Also, in some regions, generally in cool climate, there's canopy manipulation, which is basically we put foliage wires up to hold all the shoots up nice and straight, because we're a little bit cooler. So generally what we do, we lift one side, generally we lift our east side so all the foliage is up so we can get some sun on it. But on the west side, we leave half down, half up, because you never know, you could get a week of 45 and it will shrivel all your fruit. But then if you get cool weather, you need some sunlight. So we lift the east side because that's the morning sun, and half lift the west side it's just sort of trying a bit of a balance act. You lift it all up, you get hot weather, you lift it all up. You don't lift it all up, you get wet weather and all that, and you'll go, I wished I lifted it all up. So it's basically a bit of a gamble, putting half up and a
bit of old retrospective planning. That's what I like, a bit of planning.
Sort of the old gut feeling sort of thing.
And then it starts all over again. So we've got the fruit. So we've learned a bit about the actual growing process. So you've now got a whole lot of fruit sitting around in April? Is that pretty much when it comes into store?
No, depending on the season. What we'll do, they'll start veraison sort of late January, February, and then we'll start testing the fruit to see what we call a bomade sugar. The sugar content in it is tested, and when it gets to say 13.5 to 14.5, that's generally when we start to pick it. What we try and do is watch. In a really hot year, your sugar goes up really quick, your bomades go really high, but your flavour lags. So quite often you might end up with higher sugar because you want your flavour to come up. This year just gone was a fantastic year because it was quite cool. So your sugars came up and your flavours all came up together. So it was best growing season we've had for a long time. So it's sitting there. We go out, test it a number of times. Then winemaker, and we'll sit around and taste the fruit and go, oh, no, I want to give it another day, or oh, no, it should have come off yesterday, or no, we might leave it another week. So then we come through and pick it and take it into the winery. Generally, in our region, we would start whites end of February, then move on to Pinots sort of mid-March, and Riesling, then Shiraz, and then Cabernet. It's funny, people look at the vines and they look the same, but they're all different. They've all got different leaves. They all ripen at different times and everything like that, and all in different regions as well, sort of things. So.
Yeah. So we often associate Shiraz with your part of the world. That seems to be the hero wine in that part of the world. So let's suppose we've got a crop of Shiraz grapes sitting there. Take us through the process that takes it from being a whole lot of grapes sitting there to the bottle of best Shiraz sitting in my hand. Yeah.
Well, basically what we do, we'll pick it, we'll bring it in, we'll put it through we don't put it through a crusher anymore. We basically put it up into our fermenting tanks. If it's a premium parcel of fruit, it'll go into our open fermenters, which is all done by hand, and it'll stay in those fermenters roughly for 7 days. And the big difference with reds is a lot of people think with red grapes you've got red juice. Well, you haven't. Red grapes, you squeeze it and it's clear juice. The only way you get the colour in the juice is by the skins. So you leave the juice on the skins, and generally in your bigger format tanks, you'll suck the juice off the bottom, pump it back over the top, and let the juice continuously run through. You'll do that twice a day. And generally with reds, all your flavour is actually in the skins. So by running the juice through your juice through your skins, you get all the flavors from your skins and that. And that's why it stays there about 7 days. You don't want to work it too much because they can get too hard. You don't want to work it too little either because you don't get any flavor. So
and then where the art comes in versus the science.
Yeah, exactly. And then with our smaller parcels, smaller parcels, it will be all hand plunged. So we'll just have it in 4-ton fermenters or 6-ton fermenters, and we'll do it all by hand. So instead of pumping it over, we'll use a plunger like they did in the olden days and pump it out, squash it all down. Mm-hmm. After that, we drop it into a press, and basically the skins and juice and everything all going together, big press, squashes it all and just squeezes all the juice out. So,
So we can be confident that we don't have you and Nicole and Viv jumping up and down on the grapes in a barrel in Great Western.
Oh, I can't guarantee that, no, because we still do some foot stomping.
Okay, so that's the very, very special vintage.
But we all have gumboots on, so there's no smelling.
That's all right. Yeah, that's all right.
Just thought I'd better let you know that for sure.
Yeah. So we've now got the juice. It then does it sit around or does it get put in bottles straight away? How does that process?
No, it'll go into barrels. Depending on what line it is, it'll probably go into barrels for 6 to 12 months for our more commercial wines like our bin one and stuff. Our other one, our more premium, will be 1.5 years, and we'll all go into small format. Like our bin one, half goes into our big old 150-year-old barrels, and the other half goes into the smaller barrels, and we blend them together to get intensity and softness. Just depending on the quality of the fruit and the line it's going in, it'll go into barrel. And then after it's in barrel for 6, 12, 18 months, it will be taken out, then bottled. And once it's bottled, we like to hang on to it for probably 2 months at least. Because what happens after bottling, you get the wine gets a bottle shock. It's because the wine's been filtered and everything, and it's all a bit disjointed. So if you taste a wine straight off the end of the bottling line, you know, oh my God, this is bloody horrible. So you got to give it a bit of time for it all to pull itself back together and get all its flavors, and then it ends up in your hands.
So if I was to walk into the cellar door at Best's Wines and I was to pick up the most recent arrival bottle, the one that's just been put on the shelf, from the moment the grapes were picked to the moment that bottle hits your shelf, roughly what's the time period involved?
Riesling is about 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
Bin one, about 1.5 years.
And that's the Shiraz.
That's Shiraz, yeah.
Yeah. So a question that's always fascinated me, and all the winemakers will shake their head and go, what have we got this bloke asking the questions for? Yeah. But if I buy a bottle of 2018 Shiraz, is that when you bottled it? Is that when you picked it? Is that when you sell it?
It's when we picked it. The year it's picked. The year it is picked is the year it's on the label. So if it's 2018, it probably wouldn't have been bottled to maybe 2019 or 2020 and then released after that. The hard thing in the wine industry is we're working at the moment, we're trying to figure it's 21 now, and we're trying to figure out what we're going to sell in 23.
Yeah.
So because it's not a quick turnover. Some wines are quick, others aren't, but generally we're trying to work 2 to 3 years in advance. So we're always hoping that someone can sell us a crystal ball and can show us exactly what's going to happen, because it takes the guesswork out of everything if we just knew what was going to happen in 2 to 3 years' time.
And bring that retrospective planning back in. I think that's a great option.
Yeah. It is I think it's one of those industries you just, once you're in it, you sort of know what's going on, but it is quite hard to try and plan, like, you know, right, we want to take 120 tonne in this year, so that'll make this many dozen. Are we going to be able to sell that in 2.5 years' time or 3.5 years' time? And so on.
I guess there's parallels in other forms of primary production, isn't there, in terms of, you know, cattle, sheep, wheat, you know, any of those sorts of things. You're taking a gamble without any real knowledge of what's coming, because I guess that one of the most important components of any of that sort of stuff is the weather.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Mother Nature. It's. I wouldn't say it's always great working with Mother Nature, but She has her moments in life, so
great for the soul, but not necessarily for the bank balance and heart.
Oh, geez, I know sometimes it doesn't do a lot for your soul. I can tell you. I've had times when I've pulled my hair out at her. But anyway, it's all agriculture. It doesn't matter what part of agriculture. The thing with agriculture, you can plan everything down to the nitty gritty, everything what you're going to do. Then Mother Nature will say, right, I'm not going to rain for 2 months now, and everything you plan is just out the door, or she'll come and whack you with a frost and just take everything you've worked for.
Yeah.
In 2 hours, you've lost everything. So.
And it's I guess what makes the difference too between a year that's really a strong year that's got really good flavors and some years that are less so.
Yeah. It's very seasonal dependent. If you get a really hot year, you'll have wines that have probably got more black pepper in them and more higher in alcohol and taste a bit warmer. A cooler year, you'll probably get more white pepper flavors in your wines and stuff, and more aromatic and things like that. So what we try to do at best, we try and make our wines, we make them in the winery, but we try to reflect what actually happens in the vineyard, because that's where it all starts, So I think that's the main thing that we try and do is, it's made if you can deliver good grapes, that's, one of the big parcels of making good wine. If you can get the fruit in there that's good, that's hard. I've never seen good wine made out of bad grapes.
And I guess all the chefs of the world would argue the same in terms of the ingredients they put into their food. So it's not terribly surprising. Well, Ben, normally at this stage we ask some questions about you, but we did that in episode 2, so we're not going to do it again. If you missed Ben's response then, please go back to episode 2 and have a look at that and have a listen to that, because certainly we've got some great answers there. Ben, thanks for joining us on the Grampians Wine podcast today. Thanks for being part of it.
No worries. Thanks very much, Neil.
Now, you've been listening to another episode of the Grampians Wine podcast featuring Ben Thomson from Best's Wines. You can subscribe to the podcast by visiting grampianswinepodcast.com.au. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, but it will give you the chance to listen to previous episodes and to be reminded whenever we publish another episode. You can watch video versions of the podcast by subscribing to the Grampians Wine YouTube channel. We'll be back soon with another episode. My name is Neil Butler. I look forward to your company then. Cheers.